They said he only had a 20% chance of living, literally just still being here after the age of 1. So I know I'm going deep into this personal story, but it's the 1-year anniversary, and I need you to really feel what we went through so that you know why we freaking worked so hard to get this out to you, why it's been such an incredible journey for this first year to read of your miracles. And I know that your miracles start when we can turn your hope and your confidence and your conviction on, when we can get you to fight forward for your child. Welcome to the Experience Miracles podcast, where we help parents find hope, answers, and drug-free help to overcome your child's chronic health challenges. I'm your host, Dr. Tony Ebel, and I'll be sharing my experiences as both a dad and a doctor on every episode. I can take the latest science and neurology of healing and break it down in the most simple and relatable way possible. We'll take on the toughest topics and answer your biggest questions through interviews with other amazing parents and leading experts, leaving you with practical action steps that you can take to help your child heal and thrive. It's time to expect and experience miracles. Let's get started. All right, parents, here we are, the 1-year, very special anniversary edition episode, I suppose is the proper name for this. And we are going to get right into the neuroscience of hope, our favorite word in the whole world, the tagline that is absolutely the living, breathing sole purpose of the PX Docs Network and the Experience Miracles podcast is hope, answers, and drug-free help. And it starts with hope for a reason. And actually, if you go to the third piece of that, which is the actual action, the help, the care, the clinical results that we provide, I'm going to teach you here on this episode today that hope is actually a neuroscientifically proven essential beginning foundational part of that healing process. Put just absolutely cart before the horse, put simply, hope is essential to healing. Hope is actually effective in healing. And because it's essential and because it's effective and because there's actually neuroscience behind it, we would be absolutely remiss and we would be doing you, your family, and your child a significant disservice if we didn't go all in, full send on hope. So you'll never meet a doctor. You'll never meet doctors in our network who are more hope dealers and have set up, we like to call our practices very intentionally, very, yes, emotionally. We want to invoke emotion. You're going to talk, we're going to literally teach about how important that emotion, that connection, that hope dealer is to get the nervous system and the brain healing and going in the right direction. But we'd love to call our practices hope dealerships. And I'll tell you this right out of the gates as well. We go literally 120. If you're on Team PX, whenever we're in a team meeting and we're strategy and we're ideating and we're discussing, anytime my wife, Christina, who's the chief decision maker, so she is married into someone who has 462,000 ideas per day. And then I am blessed to be married into someone that says, okay, that one, get rid of all the other ones, you crazy raging bull, but that one's good. And so whenever we know that there's just absolute conviction and buy-in, Team PX says 1,000%. That is our number. That's our kind of funny internal tell that says 1,000%, this is for sure. And the reason we're 1,000% on delivering hope to you, and we go 10 times, 100 times more than anybody else, is because we know that you get 0% or probably negative 1,000% so often in the conventional medical system. So I want to start this one off by taking you back once again. And maybe you're a new listener to the Experience Miracles podcast, and you're just hearing my voice and my story, and then we're going to get into the science. And that's usually our framework and our flow. We're always going to start with the problem. We'll maybe sometimes introduce just the real life stats, but I don't even really give a crap about stats because it's not about the whole. It's about your child. It's about your family. It's about your world. It's about your daily struggles. So often we get right into the struggle of where this really exists for us. Then we get into the science to explain why is this struggle happening and how do these things that we recommend and put in action, how do they work? And then we get to those action steps. I'm going to take the same flow here today, but I'm going to get real personal. And so if you don't know, I am a father of 4 beautiful children, 3 beautiful, spicy, stubborn, incredible, brilliant, just rock star girls. And then our Cairo miracle man, Oliver. Now, Oliver is actually also an emergency medical miracle man. He is a child who went from one hospital in a helicopter, life flighted to another as an infant, just 2 days old, not even a full 2 days old. Then he went into what's called ECMO surgery, extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, heart-lung bypass. And then he had 2 more surgeries after that, and he had a ton of medications. And Oliver is a medical miracle. Now, I want to define that. He is an emergency, crisis, intervention medical miracle because that system is indescribable in its life-saving capability when it comes to emergency medicine. For our brand new babies, to all of us, it's incredible. Nothing in the natural health world, nothing in the chiropractic world, nothing in the functional world holds a candle to medical doctors, to surgeons, to neonatologists and epileptologists and neurologists. And let me give a shout out who really makes miracles happen inside those hospitals are nurses and nurse practitioners and all the providers and the therapists that are on there, the PTs, the OTs. Those are the people that are really the boots on the ground making it happen. And I know that, and I can speak to that, and I can say thank you to all of you for the life-saving you do every single day in the most crisis, intervention, emergency. How do you do it? I don't know. You're literal saints and you're world changers. And it may sound like on the surface, it's so often on this podcast that we are anti-medicine because we're so pro nervous system focused chiropractic and natural health and drug-free health. But I am the most pro emergency crisis intervention medicine guy in the world because they saved my son's life, and that is the exact right way to say it. But in the same breath, because he was born 5 to 6 weeks early, and he had a very significant fast birth that led to a physical neck, brainstem, nervous system, hypoxic brain injury. So he had significant seizures. He had burst suppression on his EEG. He had literal brain damage flashing like a red light on his MRI. He has none of these. The MRIs, the EEGs, his nervous system, his entire life, his entire well-being has completely healed. But that's why I'm getting into the details of the story from my own personal story with how essential hope was in our healing process. For Oliver, I'm going to literally talk to you about how we spoke it into existence, how we prayed with Oliver, how we connected to Oliver, and yes, literally spoken words from us. And I'm going to share, I'm going to try my best to not cry to the people that literally spoke these words into me in that storm and gave me hope and gave me conviction and gave me clarity that Oliver would be all the way better. And it wasn't medical doctors who did that job. You see, when we were in the hospital, they did everything they can. And I'm going to tell you the truth on this one too. I just got done telling you the full, unfiltered truth about how much they saved my son's life. Now I want to tell you how much they went to great lengths, ones that'll make you mad and break your heart at the same time, to try and limit his life. And I understand why they did it, because inside the 4 walls of that hospital, and as an emergency crisis medical doctor, you are told everything is genetic. There's nothing you can do. Once the brain is damaged, it can't heal. You are basic. I actually don't know if this is true, but it sure seems like early on in their career, and I'm saying again, conventional ones, in the outdated conventional system, I swear there must be a class around communication on, and that class's major directive must be, here's how you take hope away from patients. Here's how you absolutely squash it. Here's how you scare the ever-living heck out of them. Here's how you literally, instead of 10xing their hope, 10x their fear, 10x their anxiety, 10x their certainty that their kid is going to be sick and have brain damage. So we were told that our son had a 99% chance of lifelong brain damage, epilepsy, cerebral palsy, autism would be the best case scenario that we could hope for. Everybody listening, I need you to know why they said 99%, because who says 100? Even the little bit of human C that they had, which again, not a word, but you know, if you've been listening to podcasts, I tend to make up at least one per podcast, especially when I'm emotional, my brain gets running here a little bit. So the little bit of it that they had, they probably said 99%. I don't know, because it's a figure of speech in their world, and it would have sounded even more awful than it already did to say 100%. But that's what they meant. Just because they changed the number by literally 1 percentage point, they basically really sat us down in a room. Any of you parents been in there? When your child's in the NICU, when your child's in the hospital, when your child's having seizures, when you are saying there's got to be a better way than more medication. There has to be a better way than freaking phenobarbital and Keppra, which are going to, at best, maybe just symptomatically cover up his seizures, but they don't fix the actual brain damage or neurological dysfunction. So why would we want them? The side effects are terrible. If he does have any chance at all at a normal brain development and life, phenobarbital and these medications are going to literally squash it and shut it down. So we were in a battle. I am telling you the truth, and I'm coming out full freaking Tony Ebel guns a-blazing on this one about hope, and I'll get into the science, but you need to feel me before you understand the science, because I know how you felt. I've been in that room. And you want to know how much it got worse? I was a solo doctor in my practice. Oliver was born, and he went through all this 6 weeks in the NICU, and we had to fight to get him off of phenobarbital, to get nervous system focused chiropractic, good nutrition, and the things that we did fight hard to get into his system. And we got to start early because Oliver is my son, and so it worked really well, even though we were up against a massive headwind. And one time I had to still spend the mornings and certain shifts during the week coming back and obviously taking care of my patients. We had our older daughter Addison and others, so I had to take care of patients. I was a solo doctor. Now I'm going to get to the story here where my hope was instilled by Dr. Michael Cody and by Dr. Jeremy Bria and Dr. Joe Eunice. I want to give you a shout out to. These are the incredible chiropractors in my life 15 years ago who took care of my patients, and they took care of me in this way, in this episode's way with hope. But they couldn't be there every day, and so a couple of days a week or a couple hours a week, I would be taking care of patients. And one time, right when we were in the crux of this battle and we had fought them and threatened to take him out of that hospital to another, because Oliver was getting better and we knew it and we know our stuff. And you're going to know your stuff after this episode and after this podcast and after everything. So you're going to be able to stand into these conversations no matter how much they try and push and prey on your emotions and your fear and your anxiety, which is natural and normal to have as a parent whose kids are having seizures and autism and struggles. So they prey on that and they push on that and they go after that. Trust me, I know it, because I've done it. This isn't theory and me being an anti this. I've lived it as a parent. And one time while I was gone, they intentionally scheduled, they have these all hands meetings. So they get all the providers, cardiology would come in, neurology would come in, GI would come in. Remember, there's, God forbid, there's one actual doctor that takes care of your kid in the medical world. You got to like rally 462 troops who all, just want to push drugs for their own system. And so they sit you in these rooms. These are the worst rooms in a hospital. There's no freaking windows. I literally swear it's like an interrogation room. And all these stuffy doctors in their white coats with all their fear and all their training and all their accolades sit down, and they don't ask you questions. They don't ask how you're doing. They don't sit down and explain things as to what the root cause of your child's condition is. They sit down and they want to force you to do what they want you to do. Those are dictatorship meetings, and they bring them all in. And I'm being real and I'm being raw because it was the worst experience of my life. After these people had literally saved our son's life, they did everything they could to take hope away. Now, if you picture yourself in that room, at least in a lot of scenarios, I pray that you and your spouse, so whether mom, you're listening, I pray that your husband's in there. Husbands, you're listening, I pray that you were able to be in there as a united force for your child. They actually scheduled one for my son because I just know how this all played out. They knew I had absolute conviction. They knew I knew my stuff. They knew I knew the brain and nervous system and dysfunction and dysregulation and healing. They knew I knew it better than them. And I'm not trying to sound arrogant. I'm telling you, this is God's life experience for us. So they scheduled an all doctors meeting intentionally during a morning they knew I wouldn't be there. You guys, if you're listening and you're picking up what I'm putting down, they intentionally cornered my wife. And they did everything they could to split us up on this decision. My wife didn't go to chiropractic school. She is the most fierce, incredible chiropractic advocate. This is back when we're 2 to 3 years into practice. I don't have the benefit of 17 years and thousands of miracles and 20 years of studying this stuff back then. So Christina, who's my ride along, my ride or die and everything on this, is at the level of certainty, conviction in chiropractic and drug-free and natural health that she's at that time. And they knew it. They knew that she was stressed about not having him on phenobarbital. pentobarbital. They knew that she was stressed about how's his brain, how's his nervous system going to heal. Because I forgot to tell you, when they said 99%, they also earlier, before he made these first changes, they said he only had a 20% chance of living, literally just still being here after the age of 1. So I know I'm going deep into this personal story, but it's the 1-year anniversary, and I need you to really feel what we went through so that you know why we freaking worked so hard to get this out to you, why it's been such an incredible journey for this first year to read of your miracles. And I know that your miracles start when we can turn your hope and your confidence and your conviction on, when we can get you to fight forward for your child, when we can get you to continue to push forward when it feels like you're absolutely exhausted, hanging on by a last thread, and you're sick of riding the roller coaster, because that's what all this is to get our kids better. This is the hardest time of our life, and nothing is even close. And they did that to my wife when I wasn't even there. You guys, I need to get into the science on this episode, and I need to kind of probably save my emotional battery here today too, recording this one. I've never been so close. Just dads, if you're listening to this, you'll feel this probably from me in this way. I've never been so close. In fact, I've never been close to that. I'm a pansy. That's why God gave me 3. Okay, I'm tough in the way of having 3 daughters and take care of the toughest patients on earth, but the rest of me is a total pansy. I've never been close to being in a fight and going to jail in my life, y'all. I'm a really good little fella, all right? Oh, man. It's hard to describe how I felt and how I responded when I got to the hospital that afternoon. And Christina's entire mood and her certainty and her conviction had been absolutely taken out at the legs. And it just started this massive fight and discord and chasm between us, who had been so united on Oliver's healing journey. And we got over it. My wife is the most incredible person on earth, and God has incredible designs to have us together through all this. So it didn't take us long to come around on this. But for a tiny little bit, they got what they wanted. They pitted her against me to take both of our hope away. Guys, when I was in that hospital, I would literally walk the hallways. And they had these posters and pictures and stories of these kids in the NICU who had had significant birth trauma and brain damage and different challenges, just like our son had. And they were the most incredible stories, and they were wildly inspiring about, despite the different neurological delays and lifelong disabilities that these kids faced, they still were just living this incredible life. Guys, I am blessed to serve so many kiddos and families like that. I knew, though, because of the way my son's nervous system, his injury, his story mapped out, I just freaking knew with conviction, with emotion, and with science to back it up, that we could get Oliver all the way better. So I'm giving you all the details of my story at a level I've never ever shared, not on any freaking video or anywhere, hardly even within the chiropractic profession. Really only my family and my team knows about these innards of this story, the day they cornered Christina, the challenges we faced with that, and how we came back together stronger than ever. But I would literally walk those hallways, and I would clasp my hands, and I would pray by each one for that child and for that family. And then I would pray that our story would go beyond that. I remember those words. I remember God giving me that word, that our son would experience healing beyond anything any child in that NICU had ever seen. That we would have a story that would almost be so unbelievably incredible, it would be hard to tell. Because if you knew Oliver's beginning all the way to, and especially if you had medical training and you saw his EEGs and you saw his seizures, I watched him seize, and you saw him barely hanging on for his life, and you saw how bad his brain was and his heart was and his lungs were. And then you see him running frickin' 5-minute, 10-second miles at age 15 and winning cross-country races. It's unbelievable how much and how to describe that. But it didn't come without despair. It didn't come without significant challenge that I know so many of you are in. And so what we did is we prayed, and while those medical doctors did everything they could to take our hope away, every day, every single day, on the way to the hospital or on the way back or both, I would get on the phone. And often they would see me and adjust me because they were taking care of my patients. So they would not only be able to speak to me, but they'd be able to lay their hands on me, adjust me, and pray with me. And Dr. Michael Cody, who's no longer with us, and Dr. Jeremy Bria, and I can't wait for you guys. Bria, I can't wait for you to hear this. And Mike, I know you're listening live right now, brother man. They would adjust me. They would take care of us. And they would say, I'll never forget Dr. Mike. In fact, I wrote it down on my notes here. I knew I was going to get deep into this story and get a little more emotional than to keep track. And he said to me again and again, listen, dude, so I'm 20 minutes into the introduction of my story. Dr. Cody, what a great mentor for me, just like my dad and my family. I'm going to talk about them next and how much they instilled hope in me. My dad is very short-winded, where I'm long-winded, and Dr. Cody was too. So maybe it's because my two most incredible mentors were so short-winded, just so matter-of-fact and straight to the point. Maybe it's their fault that I'm so long-winded and these podcasts go on. But Dr. Cody would say, listen, dude, come on. Clean it up. He'd say, if you can get the brain and nervous system of a 19-year-old with lifelong seizures to heal, get completely clear of those seizures, get off all of their medications, why can't you do that for Oliver's brain, which is just a few days and a few weeks old? He would say that to me all the time. Because you guys, when this happened to Oliver, the reason I was able to access and use this very essential component for myself and my child, hope, to start and stay foundational in the healing process is because I had seen it. I had seen real life stories. So the reason we built the website first full of stories, and now we continue to populate it, not only with those, but then the science. See, we teach you in a very specific order. I'm doing it again today. We are going to instill stories into you again and again. And if the medical world and Research Rick and everybody else out there is, oh, case studies, those are just testimonials, do they really matter? Yeah, ask that mom. Ask that dad. Ask me and ask Christina and I how much Oliver's case study, testimonial, and case of one matters to us. Our children are our whole world. We don't need a randomized clinical trial. We don't need a frickin' meta-analysis. We also know that pretty much every single randomized clinical trial and meta-analysis out there is paid for to sell drugs. When it comes out in a way that they can sling meds from it, guess what? You hear about it. When it comes out and says, hey, natural health and other things are better, they're like, ooh, let's run that one through the shredder. Or they don't even do them. That's the reality of research. So I want you to know that Dr. Cody said those words to me again and again. And I'm going to jump right to the action. This is why you need hope-dealing doctors in your corner. Because when you're going to face those EEG reports, then you're going to look at those MRIs, you're going to watch your child have those seizures, you're going to watch your child struggle until their nervous system heals far enough and long enough to get those words out and get all the light bulbs and get all the miracles to come on. It's dark in the beginning. It's hard in the beginning. It's very burdensome and emotional, and it tries to drain your hope. So you need to be around people that know it, that have seen it, and that will speak to it, like Dr. Cody and like Dr. Jeremy Bria, who would say, you know what, buddy, man, the light may be dim right now for Oliver, but the way God made us, that light is always on. Get in there, crank it up, turn it on, he didn't say full send back then, that's a threat. Get in there and turn that sucker all the way up. I'll never forget Dr. Bria. He actually told me that the first day Oliver went into the hospital, I called him just to say, I have patients, what do I do? And these guys were just in my network back then with these chiropractic meetups and everything we did. So I just would be remiss to tell you this anniversary episode with my personal story before we get into the neuroscience, to not tell you about Dr. Cody, to not tell you about Dr. Bria. And there was another one, driving to the hospital from one to another. So they life flighted Oliver to one hospital. They did terrible care for him. They did not do what was right for him. And so we got him transferred to another hospital, to Lutheran General in Chicago, where they saved his life and did incredible things. And on that drive, Oliver's life hanging on, literally we're following the ambulance. Christina and I haven't slept for 2 hours. My brother Brett was driving me, and he said this to me. You're going to go in there. You're going to be confident. You're going to be strong. You're going to give him the greatest adjustment you've ever given anyone, and you're going to do it every day. You're going to get him all the way better, and he is going to be your little Buddha and the story that can be told within chiropractic for years to come. Who knew, Brother Brett, my man, that you're a freaking fortune teller? Because that's exactly what happened. And that day, Brett driving my car on Interstate 90, coming from Rockford to Chicago, me sitting in the back seat, having adjusted Oliver the last couple of days, having had this hope, having this conviction, but needing that dimmer switch to be cranked up through me to Oliver every single day. It's exactly what we did. And I'll give you one last key component of Oliver's story. And I hope it's okay, guys, that I went this deep. I told the whole thing today. I just didn't know when I would get rolling how deep I would go or not go. Never do. But we would sit there, and I know it's a podcast for those of you that are listening, but around the time of this podcast, we will put these photos up on Facebook and Instagram, and you'll see a picture Christina took, and I have one of her doing it, and I do it, where Oliver is still hooked up, still really, really in struggle. He's out of the surgery and out of everything else, but you'll see this picture where we're next to him in his bassinet in his NICU, pod, and we have one hand holding his hand and another hand flexing our biceps and making this strong face. You guys, we knew to speak healing, speak hope into Oliver. We would pray and we would speak these words into him. Buddy, you've got this. Buddy, God's got this. Buddy, we got this. We're going to love you. We're going to adjust you. We're going to support you. Christina would speak words of power and healing and prayer when she was nursing him and doing skin to skin. And so I know you'll listen to the podcast, but if you have not yet made your way to Facebook and Instagram around the time of the release, I want you to see that picture. It's a goofy picture. Oliver's so swollen. He's so red. He's still had all these fluids, and he's got so many challenges. You can just see how stressed his nervous system still is. But I'll tell you what, I look at those pictures still today, and I see that strength my son has. And I know that the reason he can just freaking run at full speed for 3.1, I know that he can withstand the storm that is having one older sister and two little sisters, and in this crazy world that God has given him, and he never, ever for a minute isn't the chillest, coolest, strongest, most resilient kid. And I hope that this story of hope, real life healing, and how essential us being connected to our Lord and Savior and praying, being connected, and our church community was huge at this time. But Dr. Cody, Dr. Bria, my brother, my parents, my sisters, everybody around us just believed in us, believed in Oliver, and believed in, as we say in chiropractic, the power that made the body heals the body. And it was his nervous system that was damaged. It was his nervous system that was subluxated. So what he needed was, heck yes, surgeries to save his life. But then what he needed after that was the adjustments and the natural drug-free care to heal. Phenobarbital doesn't heal. It keeps it from healing. Keppra doesn't heal. It keeps it from healing. I don't even remember the other medication. The GI doctor wanted him on one for his jaundice and his kidney and his liver function. Even though we were like, couldn't adjustments and nutrition and supplements just turn that back on? And I've never seen somebody look at me like they saw a ghost. He was like, you mean you want his body to figure out how to do it? And the guy literally goes, yeah, but his body, I think he literally said, the guy, medical doctor, top GI, whatever, doc at Lutheran General goes, yeah, but we don't really need his body to do it because we have this medication, and this medication will do it for him. And that right there was such the philosophical freaking contrast and massive Grand Canyon divide where I was like, do you not know, jabroni, the long-term consequence? That's why we're so sick, because we take a pill for everything. And so our kids' bodies, nobody's bodies ever figure out how to do it. If we're going to get our son to heal neurologically, gastroenterologically, all the things, we got to get his body doing it. We got to tap into his system with these adjustments, with this nutrition, with these supplements and things that we did to get him better. And it worked. The guy was dead wrong. Had we given him that medication to shut off the seizures, let's say they work, they'd still be there. Under the surface, medications are only, they dupe the system. They hide the symptoms, right? The problem, the dysfunction, the subluxation, the dysautonomia, the dysregulation, it's still in there. And medications actually make it harder to find and get rid of, whether we're talking gut stuff, neuro stuff, anything else. So I know this is going to be a longer episode because I knew it was going to take me a hot minute to get into the story, but that was the contrast. To recap the story, the reason I know that God sent me Mike and Jeremy and Brett and so many others into my world is they knew that those guys had to go toe-to-toe because we had hope stealers on the medical side. So thank goodness I had a community of chiropractors who are the best damn hope dealers in all the world. And I pray that not only you get one of us and a lot of us and a community, I'm going to get to the action steps at the end, on your team for the adjustments and the nervous system and the science we're about to break down. But I know that you need us to go toe-to-toe with the hope stealers and outpoint them on offense with hope dealers. So if you ever listen to us and you go, geez, those guys are extra, geez, that guy's extra, how often can you wear a hope dealer, expect miracles, experience miracles shirt? Every single day for as long as God gives me all these days here, we will push that message more so intentionally, strategically, because there's actually healing into it. So I should probably get into the science of that. But actually, I have a quick little list here. Why do they take it away? Why does the medical system work so hard to take it away? I want to actually, nobody believes me now if you've been listening to the podcast. Whenever I say, like, let me just cover this really quick, you're like, quick is like 23 minutes for you, Brotato Chip. But this one, let's give it a shot to rip through this, okay? Because I don't want to talk about the negative. I want to get back into the science and the positive and the action steps. So there's 6 reasons, and I experienced all of them. Number 1, it's called CYA. It's a fancy term. It's called risk mitigation. Nobody's up against it like medical doctors. They are literally within the worst system ever. I don't envy them a little bit. It breaks my heart that they don't get to see the miracles. It breaks my heart. You know, people always go, I don't believe in chiropractic. I don't believe in natural health. So funky. It's like, I'm a doctor, not a, preacher. But the truth is, it breaks my heart that they are so limited in their belief systems. They're so limited in their understanding of how the body is actually designed and how it can heal. And I just wouldn't want that life. I actually, a lot of my friends from undergrad, because pre-chiro, pre-med, same thing, pre-dental, they're miserable in that system. They're so at risk all the time of lawsuits. So really, most of medicine begins. Their clinical decision-making and their communication to you begins with a goal of risk mitigation, them not getting in trouble. It doesn't start with, let's get this result for this patient. It starts with, like, how do we protect our hide? Number 2, it's what's called kind of just that. They're still in that dogmatic, outdated theory of genetics, right? So you have this biomedical model that is still on this genetic theory and thinks things just go bad and we need medications and surgery to fill in the gaps of what was programmed wrong. And so this biomedical system, that theory, it also just treats patients like a number, like a machine. They're just a sum of their parts instead of the collection of their parts, right? They're just individual parts instead of something that actually a person, a human that comes out of it. It's the number one complaint. Okay, there's a lot of complaints that we get from parents about the conventional medical system, which is why we're so passionate and convicted about it. But they just feel like their kids are just a case, just a number, right? Just a chart, not an actual human. Number 3, time constraints. So they have limited time to communicate and explain things. In fact, the neurology team at Lutheran, there's 3 neurologists on staff there. 2 are the 2 that cornered my wife and had all that. They're the worst. They were 2 that it was really hard for me to literally just have any respect and any communication with because they were so awful. I don't know how else to say this. They were literally 2 of the worst humans I've ever met in my life. They were always late on their rounds to see Oliver, and they were always in a rush. So when I had questions, they said they didn't have time to answer them, which, yes, I get they're late and I get that they're busy because they're doing nothing to keep sick kids out of the hospital. So they're getting more and more busy. But also in the same breath, I knew that they probably strategically planned that because they don't have answers to me. They couldn't talk about subluxation, disafferentation, dysregulation, dysfunction, cerebellar vermis, prefrontal cortex, hypothalamus, amygdala, and the sensory motor system, how things cross over at C2, and that's where Oliver's injury was. They couldn't talk about desaturation of the brain, CSF, input in to get the nutrients in, and drainage out to get his information. I went toe-to-toe with them and everything, and they couldn't answer a single question. And so they're rushed. They have time constraints. Number 4, training and culture. That's just the way they roll. That's just the vibes, as my kids would say. Hope, Steelers, negative, pessimistic, worst case scenario. That's how they're trained. Did I say number 4? 5? I meant number 4 on that one. Number 5, they're biased. They actually think that this stuff is woo-woo. Oh, prayer, optimism, positivity, hope, empowerment. Oh, you don't want to get that into people. There's no evidence behind that. Yeah, hang on to this episode, bucko. Quite a bit of evidence, actually, okay? Including all conditions from cancer to you name it. And honestly, fear, number 6, this is what we experienced. Full freaking send. They use fear as a motivator to take the medications, get the surgeries, and get the interventions, because the medications, the surgeries, and the interventions are the money makers for them. And you may think, oh man, right here, you're about to cross the line, Tony. I was with you. I know a lot of people that work in hospitals. I know a lot of hospital administrators who run all the books and all the spreadsheets. It is a system. It has quotas. It has money to be made. It is run not by doctors who care for patients. It's run by MBAs and shareholders, just like the rest of the medical system. And And so they are literally trained in this way to invoke fear and overpower and dictatorship their patients to take those medications. And I know so many of you listening today, when I say that, you don't like it. I don't either. I don't like it for us as patients, and I can't stand it for them as humans. What a horrible existence. I can't say that enough. It just breaks my heart. I have full empathy for medical doctors. They have no training in actual root cause. They have no training in nervous system function. They have no training in nutrition. They are crisis and emergency interventions. I actually think it's completely unfair. We have built a system entirely horrible for us as patients and terrible for them as providers. They have no more one-on-one care. They're all run by businesses. They've all been bought out. There's no more doctor who gets to actually care for the whole patient. And they also have no root cause training, none of that. And then also, we're asking them to be like a pediatrician. They're trained in pathology. They're trained in sickness and disease management, not health and wellness promotion. So we're asking them to do the wrong job. They're a defensive coordinator and they're running the offense. It's the wrong system. And so even those that have the best heart, the best soul, the third doctor at Lutheran General, Dr. Shaw, incredible. He was awesome. He would answer my questions. He would engage in conversation. But he was one man within a system, and he couldn't turn the tide in favor of Oliver's healing. And so we had to push back. We had to fight through. And we did. We got Oliver off those medications. We got him adjusted twice a day, often 3 times a day. We got the right nutrition into his system. We got the right providers onto his team. In addition, once they were done saving his life, to me, it was like a baton. They're done, we're up. That's how I see it. That is exactly how I see it. All right. Last section of this anniversary special edition. Hope starts with healing, and hope has real neuroscience to it. Let's spend some time actually breaking down the neuroscience. So we're in part 3 of this one. And if you love the science and you love the data, this is your section, homies. Okay, so we're right here. So what's really, really cool is over the last couple of years, there has been this explosion of the application, first clinically. So we've been using this in our practice for 15 years. So chiropractic was actually a first mover on technology called HRV, heart rate variability. Now, even just 5 years ago, if I had to set HRV to 100 people, very few, in that mix would have understood it. But now you got an Oura Ring, you've got Apple Watch, you've got Garmin, and you've got Whoop, which are, as we like to say, in a good way, it's like the, it's the Walmart brand of HRVs. Okay. And I'm wearing a Garmin right now. So I feel like one day I really want to have a really cool partnership with these companies. So I should probably be nicer. I can't even tell you how much I love my Garmin, how much I wore a Whoop. Whoop was a little, it was a lot. Okay. And I run a crazy, anyways, I love this technology, but the truth of the science behind the technology with different kinds of HRV is there is clinical HRV, like just full throttle, accurate, in-depth analysis of nervous system adaptability, resiliency, functionality. That's what HRV is. I'm going to keep describing it here. And so the way we do it with our 3-minute, 5-minute exams at the office, we can do this on infants. We can do this on sensory and spectrum kids. We can do this on special needs. We can do this on stressed out adults. Y'all should see your HRV. It's either going to be worse than you think, because you're like, I'm doing all right. And you're like, under the hood, maybe not. And then a lot of you moms are like, I'm totally a wreck. But going through the storm builds resilience. It's the whole concept of our science. So many of you moms are actually a whole lot more adaptable, more resilient, and even more kick-ass than you ever tell yourself you are. And I love seeing good HRVs on our Rockstar Mom and Dad. And I love delivering that good news and going, see, you're tougher than you thought. You're healthier than you thought. And that perspective shift is essential. Okay, back on track with the technology with HRV. This comes into conversation first for us to teach the neuroscience section and go through some of these publications and research, because HRV is a measurement of stress on the body. So you can look at HRV 2 ways. When we have, it's really the same thing, but you can interpret it. There's 2 ways it's going to come out. If your HRV is low, if you have an unhealthy, not good HRV, and it goes low, that is a sign of significant sympathetic dominance. I speak about that on this podcast all the time. So the fight or flight system is just stuck on, likely has been for weeks, months, years. So the fight or flight, protection, stress, anxiety, hyperactivity, ADHD, just inflammation, blood pressure goes up. Like the sympathetic nervous system, we could talk about it for the next 60 minutes, talking fast to tell you all the bad things it does when it's stuck on. So the HRV technology, because it's measuring this heart rate variability, so it's not just about blood pressure and heart rate. Obviously, a higher heart rate is a sign of stress, but that's a rudimentary version of stress. If you're working out and you're going through, you do want a heart rate. You want it to be variable. The V word here matters the most in this conversation. And it's going to be where hope is going to insert itself and improve our adaptability, improve our resiliency and our variability. And we're going to be able to measure this, and studies have with HRV. And so when you have a low HRV, you have high fight or flight sympathetic dominance. That's what it's telling us. And perhaps it's two sides of the coin, and they're both bad in this conversation. Low parasympathetic vagal nerve tone also corresponds with a low HRV. So you have low resiliency, low responsiveness. Remember, the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic system is in charge of responsivity, regulation, rest, digest, recovery, reorganization, and emotional behavioral regulation. So really our mindset, our mental emotional well-being is more dependent upon autonomic nervous system balance or imbalance and vagus nerve function or dysfunction than anything else. Our neurological status, as measured by HRV, is literally the most potent, accurate descriptor of our mental emotional well-being than anything else. Because our nervous system, I just released a podcast about this a little bit ahead of this episode, the anniversary one, the fact that the chemical imbalance theory behind anxiety and negativity and like the chemical imbalance theory is debunked. Those chemicals work for the nervous system. So if the nervous system is out of balance and dysregulated, then the chemicals get out of balance. So they're part of the conversation, but they're not the actual root cause. They're a secondary kind of middleman messenger issue. And the old saying, don't shoot the messenger. Well, that's why you can take medications artificially, put some chemicals in and manipulate them, and you'll feel good for a while. But like all medications, it doesn't get to the root cause. So a low HRV, just to recap one more time, is high sympathetic dominance, low parasympathetic vagal nerve, what's called tone. So it's got low responsiveness. What would a good HRV? What would be a resilient, incredible, boosted, strong, awesome, I need this as I'm going through the storm HRV? Well, that would be one where the sympathetic nervous system isn't running the show, and we have really a strong HRV is extremely dependent upon vagus nerve and parasympathetic responsiveness. This becomes a chiropractic conversation 1,000%, back to that number, more so than a meditation or a yoga or a sauna or a deep breathing or a walks barefoot in nature conversation. Those are all wonderful things to regulate your nervous system, activate your vagus nerve. I've done podcasts, we've written articles on the different ways we can do this. Nothing has the potency of restoring and boosting and rebuilding resiliency, adaptability, and therefore HRV scores, like chiropractic adjustments. Now, what's the mechanism of that? Because subluxation, which is the one thing only chiropractors know how to find and adjust and clear out of the way, subluxation triggers sympathetic dominance, and subluxation gets in the way of vagus nerve parasympathetic responsiveness. So subluxation triggers sympathetic dominance, nervous system dysregulation and dysfunction, and a latent ongoing chronic condition comes from this subluxation called dysautonomia, which is the one thing that really crashes and is really measured with HRV. So I wanted to go 5 to 10 minutes into teaching you about HRV and about dysautonomia and about that, because when you have a low HRV and your nervous system is dysregulated, it literally changes your brain function. It changes how you think. It changes how you feel. This is neurophysiologically proven. When we are exhausted neurologically, when we are wound up sympathetic dominance, it literally changes the middle of our brain called the amygdala and the hippocampus and these different functions, but let's really stick to the amygdala. It actually overstimulates the stress, the anxiety, and the negativity side of the amygdala. So while we've done multiple episodes about the vagus nerve and the autonomic nervous system, and you hear me talk about that and the sympathetic nervous system again and again, truth be told, the amygdala, which is this emotional processing center of the brain, and what I'm about to talk about and really connect to the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, are definitely two parts of the brain that deserve their own episode. Yeah, I'll just admit my full nerdiness on this. Dr. Andrew Huberman, who has one of the top podcasts in the world, world. He has done multiple episodes with experts on brain function, and specifically did like a 3-hour conversation just about the amygdala. And I might have listened to it 3 times over. So I won't do that to you. I won't make you do a 3-hour and 10-minute all about the amygdala. And I'm going to move on from it here because I want you to know, and you can probably kind of tell the 1-2 punch cadence I'm taking with this episode. I'm going into the negative first because I'm just being real. So even in my story before, I really shared with you the negative emotions, how much the medical system and those medical doctors tried to take away our hope. Because I want you to know I really get it when you're feeling that way, living that way, stuck that way, and you're in the storm. One of my other favorite shirts is the Into the Storm shirt. I've worn that on a few podcasts. But I love to go there first so we can just punch that bear right in the face and say, okay, we know this to be true. We know the negative. Same with the science. We know that stress and subluxation and dysfunction do this to our brain function. We actually know that chronic stress takes over our brain and it changes the way it behaves. It actually changes our mental, emotional health in a real, concrete, neurophysiological way that thankfully, yes, God gave us the power of cognition and conscious and thought. And you absolutely, on paper, it sounds great to meditate. It sounds great to take deep breaths and download the Calm app and just think happy thoughts. It sounds great for us to say that to our kiddos when they're anxious and they're in a panda's flare and they're there. But there's science behind this that really grips the brain and the nervous system. And so the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, I want you to know in depth about this stuff, what it really does, how stress really gets it. But I love getting done with the not good, bad side first, because we're also diving deep into the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex on this one, because I told you I'd get into the neuroscience of hope, because the opposite of all the bad is all the good. See, the amygdala is the emotional relay center and the emotional processing center. And the amygdala and kind of its right-hand homie, the hippocampus, is where a lot of these memories are stored. So this is where the brain, it's called neuroplasticity. So the brain and even these specific centers, they get trained to operate and express and react and respond a certain way. And they often, when we go through these storms and we go through this chronic stress with our kiddos, with our own health, with everything, that's why the amygdala and then the prefrontal cortex is kind of the final action center. The prefrontal cortex is the final decision maker, as they call it. So a lot of times anxiety and ADHD and negativity get blamed on the prefrontal cortex, or they get blamed on the amygdala. Awesome. That's true. That's the actual neuroscience. And even though I spent a lot of time there, that's actually just a quick review of it. Okay. Very high level of those important, intricate, awesome brain centers. Now I say awesome because we're about to switch it. Because if it's an emotional relay center, the amygdala, and if it's an emotional decision-making, processing, action generating center with the prefrontal cortex, and we know how God made us, and we know that God prepares us to go through storms. We know that we have the neurology, and most importantly, we need the hope dealers, we need the doctors, we need the community, we need the support network, and I'll put right on the map and say we need the adjustments to reset our nervous system, rewire our nervous system, and get the amygdala to chill out. Literally, pun intended, and neurologically, scientifically intended as well. Because now when we put good into it, when we put hope into it, when we put positivity into it, when we put optimism into it, did you know you can actually change the way your brain functions? You can actually shift the amygdala in the type of emotions and the type of responses that it relays and signals to the prefrontal cortex, which means we can change our brain. Chiropractors have been talking about this for a long time. Now there's incredible researchers like Norman Deutsch. There's a book that says the brain that changes itself. Actually, there's multiple books with really similar titles about, and Dr. Norman Deutsch is amazing. Every book he's written about the brain, go ahead and read it. The brain that heals itself, and then there's another one about changing the brain. And it's awesome. It literally talks about exactly what we talk about on this podcast. And so the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, it's a really big deal for you to know about if we're going to open this hood and say, what is the neuroscience behind hope, behind prayer, behind optimism, behind getting doctors who are compassionate, who deliver news with empowerment, who give you action steps to move forward and have a plan that you can feel confident. Do you know how important it is, moms and dads? Do you know how empowering and exciting? Do you know how important it is just to have a plan when it comes to the healing process instead of just throwing darts? That's another thing parents complain all the time. They say, you know what? I got so excited. I was so filled with confidence and so filled with hope just when I saw the scans and I sat down knee to knee with you or our PX doctor and I saw the care plan. Because yes, plenty of work to do, plenty of subluxation, neurological dysfunction, dysregulation, dysautonomia to get in there, get fixed, get adjusted. There is a lot of healing to happen for a lot of your kiddos. There's neurological, there's biomedical, there's detoxes that need to happen. But when you go in with a plan, with confidence, with optimism, and with the word of the day, hope, it actually changes the way your brain processes this plan. It changes your entire experience, which is probably a pretty important thing to talk about here on the Experience Miracles podcast. And if we can change your amygdala, and if we can change your prefrontal cortex, if we can change the way your brain looks at things, we're changing your heart, we're changing everything. And if we can change yours, we're changing those around you. Now your kiddos, now your spouse, now your network looks at you and says, okay, they're up against it, but they got that smile. They've got that confidence. They still can hold on to, lean into, and max out that hope. So the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, it's going to amplify one response or the other. So let's choose hope. Let's choose optimism. Let's choose to put good communication in there. Let's choose doctors who are supportive and empowering and compassionate and get rid of those that are fear-mongering and anxiety-building and dictators. Let's put friends and networks. Let's put our social media. People are always like, social media is so nasty and so negative. Actually, mine's not. Actually, right here, I'm talking about the amplification effect of the amygdala and how the nervous system, this is literally how neuroplasticity works. It's either going to work for the bad if we let stress overrun us, or it's going to work for the good. And our social media algorithm is literally, again, this is not neurology, this is technology, but it's designed to amplify whatever you engage with. So my social media, and I do my very best to get my kiddos, and I definitely Oliver, he's watching all these runners and these coaches and all these people that are speaking, he's watching all these he's following Craig Groeschel and Dr. Josh Axe and all this. So my social media feed actually feeds me more positivity, more joyful people, more natural healers. So it's actually a pretty positive experience. It's a good analogy to say there's an amplification effect one way or another. So within my social media feed, I block, delete, ban, bye-bye everybody and their mother who's negative and pessimistic and narcissistic. And again, I definitely have to ban their mother because it's probably her who taught them to be negative. And just kidding. Okay, but that's funny. It's kind of in the frame of what we're talking about here, right? We control the output by really looking around at our inputs and saying, okay, who is around us? So just to recap a bit with HRV, brain function, when you flood someone with hope and positivity and empowerment, we've actually seen studies with HRV improving. And I'm going to real rapid fire through different conditions, but the neurology behind it, just to recap and go down the list one more time. When you are around hopeful, joyful people, and then especially when you take that on yourself, you will have a reduction of that sympathetic fight or flight response and a reduction of stress hormones. So there's been studies that being around those that are hopeful, joyful, positive, prayerful, kingdom-driven, being part of a community actually reduces cortisol and it reduces inflammation because stress, sympathetic dominance, too many stress hormones, too much cortisol, too much inflammation. So any chronic condition, even the medical doctors can't argue with this one. It's been said to a lot of our patients, inflammation is the root of all disease. Well, there's a root behind that, underneath that. Chronic stress, chronic sympathetic dominance is the root of chronic inflammation, including in autism, brain inflammation, neuroinflammation. So we've got to come in hope dealing full speed, because we can actually reduce the sympathetic response and I'm going to say this minimizing word intentionally, just with our words, just with the way we're compassionate, just with the way we communicate with you, just with the way we deploy empathy and compassion and relatability. So we're already changing you and your child's neurology before we've even adjusted. How freaking awesome is that? Number 2 on this list of how it works, it's the other side that is now the good side. We can activate and stimulate the vagus nerve and parasympathetic function. So the relaxation, regulation. And again, for this conversation, and probably every conversation I should have about the vagus and the parasympathetic system, that is the resilience nerve. That is the resilience side of our nervous system. So we're able to rest, recover, actually take those deep breaths, think those good thoughts, regulate our emotions, regulate our positivity, and build resilience. And like we just mentioned a little bit ago with inflammation, the third thing here on my list that really happens when you're around hope, it's actually been shown to boost the immune system. So inflammatory markers, like we talked about, go down, and some of the T cells and different components of immune strength are actually proven to go up when people are joyful and hopeful. They've done these studies in conditions like lupus studies. They've done studies with cancer, which has a lot of inflammation obviously underneath of it. So hope is just not something cute for a t-shirt. Hope is not just something for a preacher or a teacher or a coach or a podcaster. Hope is scientific. Hope is a healing element. It is an essential, effective component of real root cause neurophysiological healing. So you better believe we use it. Want a few more evidence notches? Here we go. Positive emotions in HRV. There is a broaden and build theory by someone named Barbara Fredrickson that shows that positive emotions, including hope and optimism, activate that parasympathetic nervous system and kick out a higher HRV, improved cognitive, physiological responses, and improved resiliency. Optimism and autonomic regulation as it affects the cardiovascular system. Another study from 2007 showed that optimism reduced sympathetic dominance and promoted vagal parasympathetic nervous system activity, which is essential for heart rate variability, and that in turn lessened blood pressure, lessened their heart rate, and improved their cardiovascular function. HRV and psychological resilience, positive emotions, fueled by this hope and optimism, correlated with higher HRV. This study from 2004 found that these positive emotions were strongly correlated with a better response and recovery to injury, to trauma, to stress. Guys, health isn't just about avoiding trauma and avoiding toxins and avoiding stress. Our health really comes down to our recovery, our responsiveness, and our resiliency. Gratitude is closely tied with hope and positivity, and it's been shown to increase HRV. Those who did gratitude journaling exhibited a better HRV, a better rest and recovery and regulation response, and they therefore showed more social, emotional regulation. And this was a study from 2010 in a journal called Alternative Therapies in Health and Medicine, which it is time to shift entirely and say, that's not alternative. That should be where we start. We need to rename these journals. We need to rename these professions in terms of how we categorize them. And medications should be the last resort alternative. Cancer patients. A study on patients with chronic illnesses, including cancer, found that those who scored higher on the HOPE scales also exhibited higher resting, so more resilient HRVs, indicating better emotional and physiological response. And there is additional studies that have shown patients who are going into cancer treatment with stronger HRVs. So this study didn't look at this exactly, but I'm going to draw this out. This study showed that those that were hopeful, those that were prayerful, those that were optimistic had a higher resting baseline HRV. Another study that we talk a lot about within chiropractic and natural health, those that had a higher HRV actually responded to treatments. Yes, medical treatments. They had a stronger response, a more effective response to chemotherapy and immunotherapy when their HRV was strong versus when it was weak. So that one, I couldn't wait to get to that part of this, because this is what it shows. It doesn't matter the intervention. It will work better with hope dealing fully deployed. It doesn't matter whether it's a natural intervention, a functional intervention, or a medical intervention. It is literally clinically research proven to be more responsive, more effective, with less side effects when the patient is hopeful, positive, joyful, grateful. And how do we get the patient there? So I actually have more studies on my notes here ahead of me, and we've talked about how it works with decreasing sympathetic tone, activating the vagus nerve, improving stress recovery, flexibility, resiliency. How do we get it? How do we access this? How do we flex this hope muscle? How do we plug in to the empowerment outlet, right? Where do we get this? I'll tell you the number one freaking place I trust the most to give it to you and your family. This podcast, our Instagram, our Facebook, our website, our emails, our newsletters, our community, and our tribe. So what does that look like locally to you? Get to that PX Doctor. I know many of you have reached out, and it's an hour away right now. It's 2 hours away. It's a state away. You're doing an intensive or considering an intensive. I just want to speak to the reality of where we are with this 1 year anniversary. We are working. I am literally recording this tonight and flying to Atlanta tomorrow to certify another 70 doctors. And then we've got another 80 and another 80. And we're actually going to I'm going to Australia. We're going to the UK. We're looking to train more teachers for our certification program so we can go from 8 seminars a year to 16 to 20. We are looking to close those gaps in the map and serve your family on a closer, more easily connected, more easy to get to, literally geographically plan. It is in motion, and you guys know me. We'll get it done as fast as possible with God's grace, God's direction, and the amazing, incredible, life-changing team behind me. I love you guys. They're the best team in the world, best community in the world. But it's worth the drive, because the hope, the empowerment, the actual action plan, the community, the tribe. See, PX doctors are just cut from a different cloth. What's our chief hope dealer, Jackie, really say? Just salt of the earth people, just the most empathetic, genuine, authentic, caring, compassionate. And I think she also usually sneaks in pretty darn intelligent. You do got to make your way through a lot of board exams and a lot of tests to get to this whole chiropractor job. And so it's worth the drive. It's worth the commitment. Go there and marinate in it. Go there and just really sit knee to knee with your PX doctor. Listen to their words. Lean on their words. Connect to their team. Connect to their office. Connect it to their community. Go to their workshops. I will tell you, this is what we have done for 17 years, and therefore it's what I teach our PX tribe to do. We build a community within a community. We want you to loiter. We always make the joke, and I kind of love this because it's my style of kind of driving this point home at the end of this podcast. I really want to put a sign on our door that says loitering encouraged. If you've ever been to those businesses, or there's got the no loitering sign, the grumpy people. Hang out there. We know that the rest of the world is pretty negative. And I actually don't want to extrapolate it all together, but we know that a lot of other healthcare places especially are pretty negative, and never good news, never doctors who listen, never doctors who are too compassionate, too relatable, too empowering, explain anything, give you much answers, or give you a care plan besides just throwing darts and taking more medications. So to get the opposite of that, just lean into it. You deserve it. You need it. It's absolutely essential for the whole family to heal. My favorite thing about PwC, and this is what the majority of PX docs practices, and I want them all to operate this way. The experience you have there emotionally will change your life. Just being heard, being connected to. The number one thing I promise you we will teach you to do is not freaking memorize the nervous system and the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. That'll come in your second year of hanging out with us. But in the first year of hanging out with us, we only want you to know one thing. We only want to teach you one thing. Listen to your gut. You're right. You're the one who has the answers. And that gut, that soul that God gave us, that spirit, that He's with us at all times, guiding us, supporting us, building resilience, telling us that storms come, but he never leaves us, and resilience will be there, and it can be built, and that muscle that's the one we want to lean into, because right next to that mom gut is your soul. Right next to that dad gut is your heart and your soul. And that is an essential part of vagal, I'm going to go right back to the science, vagal nerve tone, parasympathetic resiliency building, and healing. And if you'll allow me, and I fully understand, and I respect like nobody else out there, everyone else, with your belief and your connection. And I just, for me too, if you've listened to even much of this podcast at all, you definitely know how I'm wired. You definitely know how God has called us to this, crafted us to this, and to whom much is given, much is expected. And you know that we're a very kingdom-driven crew over here. Me, I guess I'll speak for myself on this one. So I actually wanted to sneak in overtime here, the neurophysiological benefits of prayer. There's actually been studied because hope, that cup is refilled through prayer. Praying yourself, praying with your kids. We prayed with Oliver. Again, when we put all this out, I'll have our team put on social. There's pictures of us in the NICU building that strength, praying alongside Oliver. Our pastor, our amazing tribe came in and prayed with us and did this. And there's actually now studies using HRV. So this is a pretty fun closing argument for me, closing thesis for me. We now have my two worlds colliding. This belief, this connection to how we're wired, and then an understanding and an ability to track it with science, with technology, with neurology. So it's like my heart and my brain, so the human in me and the nerd in me are just coming together in this crazy world right now, 2025, that God has put before us. And we actually know that prayer fosters hope, purpose, emotional resilience. And studies have shown that individuals who are prayed for and are praying have higher levels of hope and emotional well-being. And now some studies are coming out actually using HRV technology and seeing it improve with prayer. So hope goes up, joy goes up, stress goes down. And the final thing on this, and I mean it, it really is the final thing, there's actually a couple of studies I found that showed that even, and I always butcher this when I try and say it out loud, so intercession meaning, or intercessory meaning, I should have just stuck with intercession because that one's easier. When others pray for you, it actually improves your emotional well-being. How incredibly cool are we now living in this world where we can have studies, have research through HRV, have technology. You can use it yourself if you want with your Whoop and your Garmin and your Aura. I promise you that when Oliver was in that hospital, we felt every single neurologically boosting dosage of prayer that we were able to get on our knees and deliver ourselves to Oliver, with our daughter Addison, with those close to us. We felt our church community praying for us. We felt our chiropractic community praying for us. And I hope, in closing, having been in that NICU, having been in those frickin' drab, no windows, no hope, stuffy rooms with all those doctors who tried to take it from us, I hope you feel it from me. I hope you feel the hope, the confidence, the empowerment, the compassion, and I hope you feel the conviction and the confidence that I know your child can heal. I know you will make it through to the other side of the storm. And I hope you feel our prayers too. I really, really hope you feel our prayers. I hope you know that every interview we come on here, or not every interview, that's probably not the right term on it, but I hope you know that God knew exactly what he was cooking up with this first year of the Experience Miracles podcast. If you just found this one and you're an hour plus into this one and you are loving this one and you especially love the conversation about hope and about prayer, I want you to really go back and I want you to listen to the interview with Jordan Rubin, with Josh Axe, and with Courtney, Organic Blondie, I think is how she goes on Instagram. Many others got into this too. Many of our other interviews. Dr. Sharina was incredible with this as well. I'd probably be remiss to mention her, and I'm even being remiss to mention a few others. But if this is your jam, if leaning into hope and getting plugged into every bit of your hope and your faith is an essential part of your healing journey, and I want it to be, then I want you, actually, even those of you that have been listening and you've listened, you caught Jordan's interview and Courtney's interview, go back and listen to those. Go on a binge right now with the Experience Miracles podcast here around our 1 year anniversary. Go listen to Jordan, to Courtney, listen to this episode again. I'll wrap us up now, but the action steps are to go out and seek out as many hope dealers, as many kingdom driven, faith strong, resilient obsessed, neurological nerds, community, tribe, and in the same breath, you got to get rid of those that aren't. You got to trim your circle. Any of those, whether they're professionals and providers and doctors who just seem HE double hockey sticks bent on taking hope away, take them away from your circle of influence, all right? So you can go up, you can go forward by plugging into those who have hope coming out of their eyeballs, and you can also make sure you don't get pulled backwards by delete, block, ban, forget my number, not grabbing coffee with you. Those are important real-life action steps to get the most amount of healing for you, for your incredible, resilient, miracles are coming, kiddos, for your whole family, for all of us, this community, this tribe, this network. Happy 1 year to each and every one of you. I hope many of you jumped in on the contest. I hope we're, if you've been listening, I don't know if the preamble will be on this one when you listen to it, but my two beautiful little girls, Tiny and Elena, came in and did a little recording. Recording would be like the technical term, roasting of their father. They're very, a lot of satire, a lot of sarcasm into this family. Wonder where they got it from. But I love you. I appreciate you. I am so grateful for you. And I am so optimistic. And I am so confident. And I am so positive that the entire massive transformative shift in healthcare is right upon us right now. And it's us, by leading our families, to make this shift. And then collectively, millions of us doing that individually, change everything. Will change the future trajectory of health for our kids, will change healthcare, will change it all. And we're going to do it in our families first, and we're going to do it together always. God bless. Be well. Thank you. See you on the next one.